皆さん、こんにちは、インフィニティベンチャーズの田中です。で、今日このセッションはですね、なんか先ほど日本語でと言われたんですが、実は、後ろの楽屋で話してた、今回パネリスト、日本語英語もどっちも大丈夫だって言われてましたので、実際にオーディエンスの皆さんの、英語圏の、日本の以外のから来ている方も多いかと思うので、ちょっとどれぐらい、日本語でのニーズがあってどれぐらい英語でニーズがあって、それに合わせてちょっと変えてみようかなという話をしています。実際に今回、日本語で聞きたいという方はどれぐらいいますか？ 1 人2人じゃあそれ以外の人はそもそも僕が今何言ってるかわからないという回で大丈夫でしょうか？だとしたらじゃあ英語でしてもいいですかね？はい、それでは OK, so based on my current survey, that there's about 10 people who understand what I was just saying in Japanese. So everybody else either don't understand Japanese or just pretend that they don't understand Japanese. So I'm going to switch the panel to English for the benefit of the silent majority we have here. Now, we have, I think our session is titled, this session is titled Panel Without Fear. I wanted to talk about actually the opposite with what each panelist actually fear most. But actually, there's something actually I just noticed. I think there was some typo in our program. I think we have a guy from DNA, and now he pretends he's actually not. And I just have to check with James. What's going on? Did we make a typo in our
no
preparation
typo,
material?
Just, an announcement that couldn't be made until today.
Ah, so you just made it.
Just made it.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So what does that new title mean to you? And how do we... So are you the new Dave? Are you going to start swearing like crazy and we are supposed to
I'll try to tone it down a bit, yeah. Not as much Tourette's as Dave. He's got a medical condition, so...
And you don't?
I do not. Not that I know of, at least. Yeah.
Well, we'll wait for another year and see. But congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So, having clarified who actually James is, which now we know that he's part of the Davis gang here in Asia, I would like to actually start with every panelist with actually, before we talk about fearlessly about all kinds of topics, I actually want to hear from each one of them what they fear most. And just to be fair, I should also, tell you guys what I fear most. I spend most of actually time not in Japan but in China. What I fear most actually lately is that the Chinese government is really cracking down on VPN services. I'm really feared one day all my VPN solutions won't work in China, no longer access Google, Gmail, YouTube, everything that I enjoy on this side of the world. So that's actually what I personally fear. But let's hear from our panelists actually what they fear most. And since Saito-san, you're closest to me, you're going to be my first victim. Or should I call it just William?
No, William's fine. Yeah, no, I think my biggest fear is the very definition of fear in Japanese, that the word shibai has such a negative connotation that I think it's the root of a lot of issues in Japan, and that it doesn't allow for people to actually do ventures and so on. That people forget that innovation and the basis of fear and failure is how we do things. And so I think that losing the word and the real meaning of what failure is in Japan is a failure in itself, and I think that is something that as a country we need to overcome.
So what you fear is actually preventing new things from happening in Japan.
Yeah, so fear and failure is something that is really an obstacle, and I think that if we get past that, then Japan could definitely become great.
Okay, so William forgot our promise that backstage we were supposed to say something funny, but since he said something very meaningful, I expect James to say something completely meaningless.
Meaningless. Okay. Well, I hope it's not meaningless because I do mean it. But I do fear my girlfriend.
You have one?
I do have a girlfriend, and that's because she's been with me even through the hardest times of being an entrepreneur. So if I were to lose her, then that would be pretty painful.
Oh, that's very personal.
Yes.
Okay, so we have to talk about the off the stage
Sure,
afterwards. Sure. Isayama-san, what do you fear most?
I think it would tie to our discussion topic today, but I think I fear, living in Silicon Valley as a Japanese, every day I fear that Japan is being forgotten by the tech community. I think in Japan we hear about Japan passing, but it feels like Japan nothing,
So
as a
nothing
resident.
is worse than passing.
Yeah, it's actually bad. If you're, like I sometimes envy China. People say bad things about China, but yet people still pay attention. You can't ignore Chinese economy or Chinese tech community, whereas Japan, if no one talks about Japan, people are eventually going to forget. And sometimes people say, "Hey, Sony, is it a Chinese brand?" That's humiliating as a Japanese. Yeah, I mean, people are starting to forget where these brands came from. So that's the biggest fear for me, which kind of leads to, I guess, our topic today.
Okay, so we'll get back to that comment in a bit in question.
You didn't keep your promise.
You went with the funny one, so it's
promise.
serious, funny, serious. So she's
okay,
gonna come up with something creative. Yeah.
Naka-san, what do you fear
I'll be
most?
saying really serious stuff.
Okay.
So I guess I'm the only one running a startup right now in Japan, and from that perspective, the biggest fear will be stopping the innovation, being innovative. So on the early stage, Namba-san was on the stage. He was having a conversation with the younger startup founders, and she said the biggest problems that startups may face are the problems within the startups, within the relationship between the founders. And yeah, in the past few years, as my number of my team grew, I see in the beginning people are really, really willing to get together and being really innovative to create really cool stuff. But when the company grows bigger, people start to be more stable. Like they just want to do daily work. They don't care about innovation anymore. So being
Are you talking about your company or companies in general? I just want to make sure.
in general, and also my company too. Yeah. So my biggest fear is to be stop being innovative.
Okay, thank you. So now that we've shared some of our fears, let me actually then get into our main topic, given our limited time. Let's move on. So I think one of the big elephant that's sitting in the room, and since we have people from all over Asia, plus Japan and US, I think we should say aloud this, which is a point that Gen mentioned. I think most people globally, when they think about tech hubs, they are thinking about, of course, Silicon Valley and Beijing, and perhaps markets like India and Japan. I really feel that someone who goes back and forth between China and Japan is becoming forgotten. And so the question that I like to ask our panelists that my view is that I think the world is actually really starting to feel Japan nothing. And I think part of the problem, of course, with policy. And when I look at, like in China, with the communist government running, but they still allow Airbnb and Uber-like businesses to flourish. And in the meantime, Japan, which is supposedly, last time I checked, it was still like democracy, somewhat of, and plus capitalist nation. However, when Uber did a little tiny experiment in Fukuoka, it got shut down immediately. So like, somehow this market is not really innovating in the way that it could be, and so maybe those things are leading to Japan nothingness. And I just wanted to hear a panelist's view on my comment. If Japan nothing, I don't think TIA should be doing this conference here because we're all wasting our time, right? So I want to hear from our panelists, what do you feel about the nothingness that's surrounding Japan? So Saito-san, you're probably the person who's most responsible for this problem, so I'm going to start with you.
No, I think that nothing is an overstatement, but what's probably fair to say is everybody's here because there's a fundamental basis of good things. And I think that we still have a good educational system and technology, but the issue that we face is there are very few companies that actually go global, that people forget that the common language around the world is not English. It's broken English, that a conference like this should be done in English, that this information from the outside world is not only not coming in, but the people here who are doing great things have a hard time getting that message out. And a lot of this is policy. I'm definitely trying to get this message across within the government of Japan, but it's also the people based on the educational upbringing, how they take risks, how they communicate well, how they form teamworks. And this is an area that we've lost in the last several decades. And I think that it's something that can be cured because compared to other countries, where we have to go to is not such a big hurdle, but there are some mindset changes that are pretty instilled that has to change, definitely.
Okay, so that's your view. But what about you, James? You just took on this role of 500 head of Japan, right? Why is 500 bothering with Japan if we are nothing?
Well, okay, if that's your opinion, that it's nothing. First
Sorry,
of all.
I was trying to put
well,
words in your mouth.
I think that it's, Peter Thiel once called in Japan ultimate contrarian bet, which it is. I mean, but at the same time, you don't have these fundamental infrastructure problems, right? You also really do have smart, hardworking people. You have all the dynamics there. What I think is missing is two things. One is lack of capital. You can't expect entrepreneurs to be able to grow companies with only $1 billion invested in startups per year. It's about 75 billion in the US. And then the other part is language. And when I say language, I don't just mean English. I mean connecting with globally. So, for example, study abroad rates have gone down. When I was in university, I would look around myself and I would see only Chinese and Koreans. I was the minority there. And so, those things actually have like long-term effects. So, if it's let's say a typical American, his boss says, "Hey, why don't we partner with a television manufacturer?" He's gonna call his friend from Samsung, not his friend from Sony, because that friend never existed. He was never in the class. And so, and then also, when Japanese go abroad and they work abroad, they also bring back a lot of those cultural nuances, that understanding, and also that network. So,
Hearing what you just said sounds like you completely agree with me.
Well, okay, but that is what needs to change. But I think what we can do is the capital part. We can help on the capital part. We need help from people like Saito-san on the English part.
Well, I mean, I have to interrupt there because of that. I actually don't think it's a capital thing. It's a smart capital thing. The problem with the Japanese government in many cases is that there are too many grants that allow people to get capital actually pretty easily, and that this actually is in direct competition with the smart capital that venture capitalists
How much money are we talking about, though? I mean,
no, right,
like
but it's enough for people to just get by and do something interesting. They don't have to take that next rung. So it's that smart capital that I think is missing.
So you're saying there's enough money. You're saying not enough.
Okay, would any of us admit to be like dumb capital? I mean,
no. I'm sure the panelists here are smart capital. What I'm saying is that it's easier to get capital here vis-a-vis other countries versus having to negotiate with a venture capital and have various conditions.
I think maybe Saito-san, I'm sorry, I'm trying to rephrase you, but to get small money, I think maybe it's easy, but it's very difficult to get big money.
Big money, yes.
Smart money.
Scaling is difficult. Yeah.
So you're going to change that with Dave. You're going to basically bring most of American investors' money and try to allocate it here instead of India?
It doesn't have to be Americans' money, but there's two parts. One of them is we want to increase the number of exits, because exits are what drive returns. The better returns you have, they're going to be more smart people starting companies. They're going to be more investors because the returns are better, more money pumping into the system. So we would like to increase the number of exits that are coming out of the Japanese market. And we also think that if we can get more foreign buyers, that'll also tell the Japanese traditional companies to wake up and say, okay, we actually need to do some stuff. So that's what I think we can bring to the table.
Okay, Isayama-san, I know you're doing U.S.-Japan thing, so I'm sure this is actually at the heart of your also business. So what's your perspective on this?
I think it's awfully difficult for Japan today to embrace a lot of capital simply because there aren't enough entrepreneurs. Japanese market still is very domestic market. The greatness about Silicon Valley is that it's a diversity. It's not just American people. It's from people from India, Korea, Chinese. They form a team, great team, where $10 million, $100 million fundraise justifies those great team. Now, when you look at Japanese entrepreneurship ecosystem, do we see any foreigner-led CEOs? Maybe a little bit. But but it's very few, right? When you look at the number, I would say more than 90% of Japanese startup ecosystem is run by Japanese who speaks Japanese language and who never been to United States. So that's the biggest issue. Our fund size is $360 million. That's a huge fund.
But is that really an issue? Because when I look at big startups in India and China, they're just run by Chinese and Indian people.
But that's assuming that the market is growing like crazy, right? Japan used to look like that, in 1970s and 80s. We're not living in that kind of hyper economy, so we need to think something differently. I think going back to the original question about is Japan feel like is there nothing about Japan? One anecdote I can share. Last week I was actually with Ben Horowitz, who is coming, I guess, tomorrow to present. I was in his office, and since we share one company board, we're talking about, you're going to be in Japan, and I'm going to be in the same conference, blah, blah, blah. And he said, what do you think the issue about Japanese startup ecosystem? And he says, oh, I've been to Japan so many times during Netscape days, Loudcall days, but I think people don't know that Japan is still the third largest GDP economy. People don't know that Japan still spends a lot of IT budget relative to any parts of the world.
And it's actually the biggest app market.
Yeah, and also people don't know that Japan's, now with the weak yen and all the things combined, it's not as expensive as it used to be. So most people in America says, oh, doing business in Japan is too expensive. The labor cost is too expensive. We know that there's a lot of technology. So I think one thing is that the branding, the government is not doing enough branding or communication to the tech world, because people don't like, oh, I know Japan, but I never been there, or like I hear about it, but everyone talks about India and China. I think government is doing a little bit, but it's not enough in my mind. You know, and I would love to see more help there. And again, like you know, you mentioned, it's the language and cultural barriers is not trivial. I think Japan has a very unique culture because we're an island. Everyone is Japanese. For foreigners, it looks very far. You know, it's kind of intimidating. I think it makes it very look difficult. So that's why I think someone like 500, who has who has a reputation in U.S., enter Japanese market and tell everyone, hey, it's not that difficult. You know, we can do it. You can do it. You know, you just have to create those precedents, such that people can follow. Because I don't think anything is dead here. Or you know, I worry if we don't do anything for the next 10, 20 years, we're not going to have this conversation. If we do something now, maybe there's some interesting innovation that Japan can play in the global tech space. That's what I believe. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, Naka-san, you know, you just heard from investors and regulators about, you know, Japan ecosystem. But obviously, these guys are just investors. They are not the doers. You're the doer. I want to hear actually from the startup perspective. Are we all talking nonsense? Like, actually, those things don't really matter from a startup point of view. As long as there's enough venture capital money coming your way, some of the bigger issues we are talking about, you know, Japan kind of being eclipsed by, you know, bigger markets like China, India, is that actually non-issue? Like, what do you feel as a startup founder working in Japan's domestic ecosystem?
Like other people mentioned about the VC money, it's not really enough in Japan. In past like 2-3 years, I think more and more money are being funded into.
You've been raising a lot of money, I hear.
Yeah, we are, and like other startups have been.
Is it dumb money or?
What's it?
Is it dumb money as people are talking about here?
I didn't really get the definition of smart money and dumb money. Sorry, I wasn't really.
Okay, we won't pursue that question.
Yeah.
The ones that don't invest are dumb money. Right?
I'm sure some of your investors are sitting in the audience.
Yeah. Anyways, the funding environment has been really improving really well, I think, in the past few years. So the problem from my perspective, from the founder of the startup, I think Japanese startups founders are too focused in domestic market, because the domestic market itself is really huge, and the people can really make sales, kind of like okay sales to make a profitable company. But like other people mentioned earlier, I think founders need to focus more on the overseas market penetrations. Yeah.
Is that applying? Does that apply to yourself as well? Are you guys going overseas?
Yeah, I definitely feel that way, because like there are many large startups. I mean, used to be a startup companies like GreedDNA and CyberAgent and Rakuten, even Rakuten. Those companies has grown like so large, but still those companies' portfolio is consists of local domestic businesses, and none of them have really succeeded into penetrating to other countries except for LINE. Yeah, so we do the service called Wantedly, and we are trying to penetrate our service into Indonesia. So
can I actually ask a little more specific question about your company, Wantedly? So when you guys think about going outside of Japan, like what markets do you actually consider going first? And I actually want to hear why. We
are now focusing at the East Asia market, and the reason behind that is that we want to become like LinkedIn in Southeast Asia, and we are becoming like one in Japan.
And it's because LinkedIn sucks in Asia, is that why? I mean, okay. No, I didn't say. Sorry,
I
think we have some friends from LinkedIn, but don't
worry.
I think she didn't mean it personally, but she actually believes.
I didn't mean anything. Yeah, LinkedIn's concept is kind of outdated now. So people don't work for money anymore. People are looking for the meaning to work. So that's where Ontedly comes in to connect people and companies based on vision and passions. So I think that's what makes difference. And also, LinkedIn is really strong in English-speaking countries, so that's why we are trying to focus on Southeast Asian market. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well,
anyways,
we
that
won't
was
pursue the LinkedIn
perspective
question
from
anymore.
founders,
But
yeah.
it's a panel without fear, so we can talk about anything. I actually, now that James has, returned to Japan in another way as a head of 500, actually I want to ask you some question, and maybe other panelists can answer. So, you've been living in Japan for the last 4 or 5 years, and if you're not blind, which I think you're not, and I'm saying probably don't really see what's happening in Japan as much as you do, but even from occasional visitor here, I've noticed that Japan actually had an interesting incubator boom for several years. I think it started like about 3 or 4 years ago. There was a lot of YCon-inspired accelerators, incubators popping up in Japan. And I think maybe there were like half a dozen of them here. But my understanding is that they're actually all either shutting down or basically slowing down or move to Israel or do other things. So it looks like this startup incubator boom was kind of come and gone already. So have you missed your timing, or why are you starting this 500 now?
Well, so first of all, we're not an incubator. We're a seed stage investor, first of all. And then I won't speak to any specific cases. But I will say that in general, I don't think that there was a lot of value add operationally. I think a lot of times, these people will get capital, and they would get advice that's, not necessarily from someone that has a lot of expertise in certain areas. And so we hope that we can at least bring Silicon Valley best practices instead of, a Sarariman's best practices.
So you're just saying those incubators failed because they sucked. Is that what you just said?
Well, it is a panel without fear, so yes.
But I think along those lines, I'm the one that opened the door to smart capital and dumb capital. But you hit it on the head that the ecosystem in Japan is definitely that we have investors that are salarymen or bank people who have no entrepreneurial experience. And so that ecosystem where I think it's very important for someone like Startup 500 to provide not just the capital, but the mentoring, because that's also the role, I think, of a venture capital, to open up their Rolodex, to help them along in difficult times. And unless you've experienced it yourself, unless you've cleaned the toilet yourself, it's hard to really find that context. And that's the difference between dumb government money, because governments are never good at picking innovation in any country, not just Japan, and smart money, whereas you apply the money, but you also equally apply the expertise and the background and stuff. And that's what Japan lacks, because the people who are supplying the money don't have that experience.
What about you, Isamu? You were previously with DCM looking at Japan market, and of course now you have your own lab and fund. And have you seen this kind of passage of this era in Japan with this incubator boom and all those startups, and now they seem to be losing steam? How do you see the market?
Yeah, I think in my mind, Japan is not, again, ready to have a lot of incubators today because it's just very different from Silicon Valley. You can't just cut and paste Silicon Valley. I think for incubator to work, I think it shouldn't be a boom, because boom means it's going to bust, right? It has to be part of the culture. It has to be part of the system. So I think we're not there yet. I think what is, to be honest, the biggest missing piece is the fact that there's so many people coming to these conferences. These people should be doing something, right? They are highly motivated. They're interested in entrepreneurship. Yet I bet most people are out of big companies. That's the biggest issue, right?
Okay. Can I just check with the people in the audience?
Yeah.
So who are actually doing a startup right now yourself? Please raise your hand.
Yeah, so it's still minority, right?
Okay, so everybody else is just like wasting our time here. Like they have nothing to do with venture. They come to this conference. Maybe they work for big companies, big salary. But
if I want to be controversial, yes. But the point is, I think Japanese culture. Just let me explain. I think what's missing piece, which is obvious in Silicon Valley, not obvious in Tokyo, is that in Japan, people has to be inspired to become an entrepreneur. There is no obvious role model. That's one. Two, there is no obvious tool or know-how how to run a company, which James and everyone is trying to solve. The incubators are trying to, which is a good thing. But I think, again, just looking back how I'm running my new business right now, someone has to teach you. Okay, that's good. There's so many tools available, professional doing it. but someone has to push you, inspire you to do something on your own. I think that's really missing, because if you're a big company salaryman, who's going to push you to say, hey, you should quit and do this?
Nobody.
Nobody's going to do that for you.
Sometimes you get when your company goes down, but that's the only push you might
so
get.
I think there's some missing elements in Japanese society, which obviously my organization is trying to solve by creating the more smooth path to try entrepreneurship and allow them, failure is not too bad. You can make several failures and you can still learn from it. You need that kind of playground or like environment where people can try things. And then eventually there's like, oh, it's not too bad. Let's quit and do something new. I think that part, entrepreneurship education or whatever you call it, is a big missing link in Japan. So if you have a mega fund and incubators, no one's going to use it. How are you going to use that? Yeah.
We would actually succeed. Perhaps we have better chance of succeeding if people in this audience take your advice and quit their job tomorrow.
Yes, that would be great.
And do the same thing you've done recently, right?
Actually, I'd also like to add to that. I think a lot of people compare Silicon Valley today with their local ecosystem, and I don't think that's the right thing to do, because that's taken, 40, 50 years, 60 years to develop something like a Silicon Valley. And I think the reason that Silicon Valley has evolved to what it is today is because the entrepreneurs that succeed actually give back a lot. So I would like to see that as well. The entrepreneurs that did actually make it to also give back, and that's what's going to grow it at a faster rate.
Obviously, we'll come back to Naka-san in 5 years, and that's probably she's ready to give back in 5 years. But before going to the future, 5 years from now, I think you mentioned actually when we were having this, backroom conversation that when I mentioned about this incubator will come and go, you said you even didn't notice. Is it because the incubators actually matters so little that you didn't even care? Like, can you actually qualify your comment? It's okay, and it's okay to offend some of the people in the audience. We've already offended them enough.
Like incubators, its definition is like 500 startups in the kind of.
No, I'm talking about ones in Japan, like accelerators that you probably are friends in.
Our company didn't really rely on those incubators, so that's probably why we didn't really pay attention to it. Yeah, can I say something about smart money that you mentioned?
Okay.
So your point was that smart money is not really enough in Japan, but I think things are changing a lot, and our company is actually funded by raised funds from a co-founder of DNA, Kawada-san, and also we have investment from the Cyber Asian, Fujita-san. So I get lots of mentorship from those people, like Kawada-san and Fujita-san, and I think those opportunities are more and more open to younger people, and that's what makes us really successful.
So you're saying the money from DNA and Cyber Asian
no,
were smarter
like
than
angel
money
money.
from Nikkei? Is that what you mean? Sorry. Sorry, I shouldn't have to say that. That was my comment, not yours.
It's there, but when there's only 2 people for 150 million population, it's definitely one-sided.
Well, yeah, my point is like it's getting better. Like it's not like it's
from 0 to 2, yes, but definitely not enough.
5 years ago, it's gotten better for sure.
Yeah, and I think there are more than 2, like maybe hundreds of angel investors, I guess.
Okay, so I think we got the deadline coming. So actually, I think maybe a final question I'd like to ask everybody is that, given all the nuances of this market we just talked about, it's a big market, but still lack of money and so on, and there's perhaps wrong branding for the country. Where do you think some of the opportunities in Japan? So I'll start with myself. I actually think Japan is one of the biggest market that provides least competition for startups. So if there's like a smart team with, not necessarily dumb, but smarter money, I think maybe there's still a lot of interesting businesses you can build either from within or even from teams from outside. So I actually think that there's a lot of interesting opportunities here. Like, in China, if you had an interesting opportunity, there are 1,000 companies going after. So you're going to go into a very tough battle. But Japan doesn't seem to have that level of competition. So I see actually a lot of blue ocean opportunities. That's my personal view. But I like to hear from panelists, especially the ones who are going to be doing investment. You guys, where do you think are the opportunities?
So I think that Japan is actually a lot of opportunity. If you think about the last 20 years and the funk that we're supposedly in, there's nothing that fundamentally has actually changed. The infrastructure is great, the educational system, politics is not bad. The thing that we've lost as a country is really confidence. And so if we get back to the original topic of this session of failure, what happens to a lot of Japanese, including people in this room, entrepreneurs and so on, is that they're so afraid of failing, they will pass the buck on someone else. So as an individual, as a society, as an individual, we all haven't failed. But as a group or from a macro perspective, we have definitely failed. It's getting past that. And so I've been an investor. This is my 10th year in Japan. So as a venture capitalist in investing, tremendous opportunity. It's just to show that confidence and to overcome failure because we all do it. We have to, or else you can't have innovation.
Okay, James, we just got given that our time is over, so please make it very short and sweet, or sour, whichever you want to go.
Well, I mean, I don't really have much to add to that. I'm just gonna be beating a dead horse here. So, go ahead.
Okay, Isayama-san.
Yeah, I think people ignore how much engineers big companies in Japan have. So maybe this is not a great comment, but I wish like Toshiba or Sharp just completely collapse.
Release those engineers?
Yeah, and all the engineers become available for startups. Then you're talking about hundreds of startups with great engineering talent all of a sudden available all over Japan, which I think is a great thing if it happens. But unfortunately, it's going to be hard to make it happen. So I kind of wish that happens, but I don't think it will happen.
Okay, so we wait for big companies' failure.
Yes.
That might create a lot of new opportunities.
Yes, definitely.
Naka-san.
I think our service, sorry, keep mentioning about our service.
It's okay, it's shameless plug is fine too.
Wonderly is making lots of opportunities for younger people working for large corporates to change their career path to join startups or start their own startups. So we hope to keep doing that to make Japanese startups more stronger, more successful. Yep.
Okay. So with some of the positive comment, I think I'm going to wrap up the session. So thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. So Japan is not over yet. So hopefully, Tech in Asia will have another event next year and you'll all come back. So thank you.
ありがとうございました。パネラーの皆様ありがとうございました。Thank you so much.